This bobcat was raised by three dogs, and it thinks it's a dog. What happens next is unbelievable. The Montana wind screamed through the snow-dusted pines, biting at Michael Thompson's face as he gripped his daughter Luna's mittened hand. The forest was a blur of white, the storm clouds above promising a blizzard that could bury their small farm in hours. At 42, Michael, a biologist with a weathered face and a quiet intensity, knew these woods well, but the dropping temperature sent a prickle of urgency down his spine. Luna, 12 and small for her age, struggled to keep pace, her boots sinking into the deepening snow. Her dark braids swung beneath her hood, and her breath puffed out in quick clouds. "Dad, we're close, right?" she asked, her voice trembling not just from cold but from the loneliness that clung to her in this remote corner of the world. Michael squeezed her hand. "Almost there. Kiddo, just follow the dogs." Ahead, their three German shepherds, Rusty, the grizzled leader, Finn, the youngest and most playful, and Aspen. Steady and watchful, plowed through the snow, their dark forms cutting a path. Rusty's ears flicked back, catching the howl of the wind, but his stride never faltered. Michael trusted those dogs more than any compass. They'd guided him home through worse than this. The farm was only a mile away now, its promise of warmth pulling them forward. Then Rusty froze, his nose lifted, pointing toward a fallen pine half buried in snow. Without a sound, he bolted toward it, Finn and Aspen following in a silent rush. Luna gasped, pointing, "Dad, look." Michael's heart quickened as he squinted through the flurry. The dogs circled something small near the tree's roots, their tails low but not bristling. He tugged Luna forward, his boots crunching, until he saw it, a tiny bobcat kitten, its spotted fur matted with blood, its body curled tight against the cold. Its cloudy blue eyes blinked weakly, and its shallow breast barely stirred the snow. Michael knelt, the wind clawing at his coat. He peeled off a glove, his warm hand hovering over the creature. It was no bigger than a house cat, maybe 6 weeks old, and fading fast. Luna crouched beside him, her eyes wide. "Is it dying?" she whispered. Michael didn't answer right away. He scanned the area, spotting a trail of blood leading into the darker forest. A glint of metal caught his eye, a rusted trap, illegal and cruel, hidden under a snowdrift. Poachers, he thought, his jaw tightening. The kitten's mother was likely gone, taken or killed. As a biologist, Michael knew the rules. Interfering with wildlife often did more harm than good. Nature was brutal but balanced. Yet the memory of another failure surged up. Unbidden. 20 years ago, as a college student, he'd found an injured hawk, its wing broken. He'd tried to save it, carrying it to his dorm, feeding it scraps, but it died in his hands, its sharp eyes dimming. The guilt had lingered, a quiet scar. He shook his head, pushing the thought away. This was different. The storm was hours from peaking, and temperatures were plunging below zero. This kitten had no chance alone. "Dad, we can't leave it," Luna pleaded, her voice cracking. Michael glanced at her, seeing the desperation in her eyes. Luna had struggled since they moved to this isolated farm 2 years ago. She had no close friends at school, her days filled with books and the bung. This kitten, fragile as it was, had already sparked something in her. He looked back at the dogs, to his surprise. Rusty wasn't growling. Instead, the old shepherd leaned forward and gently licked the kitten's head, a protective gesture Michael had never seen him offer to anything but his pack. Finn and Aspen sat close, their eyes soft. It was as if they understood. Michael exhaled, his breath visible. "Okay," he said, scooping the kitten into his arms. It was feather-light, its body limp but warm. He tucked it inside his coat, against his chest. "Let's move." Luna's face lit up, though worry still creased her brow. They hurried on, the dogs leading with renewed purpose. The wind howled louder, snow stinging their faces. But Michael's mind was racing. He knew bringing a wild animal home was a risk. Rebecca, his wife and a veterinarian, would have strong words about this. And yet, the kitten's faint heartbeat against his chest felt like a challenge, a chance to rewrite that old failure. The farm came into view, its yellow porch light a beacon through the storm. Rebecca was at the door, her auburn hair tied back, her face etched with concern. "You're late," she said, then froze as Michael unzipped his coat, revealing the kitten. "Michael, what is that?" Her tone was sharp, professional. Luna jumped in. "It was hurt. Mom, we couldn't leave it." Rebecca's eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside, letting them in. The warmth of the kitchen hit like a wave, the smell of stew lingering. Michael laid the kitten on a towel, and Rebecca knelt beside it, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Hypothermic," she muttered, checking its pulse. "Malnourished, too. And this wound?" She pointed to a gash on its hind leg, crusted with blood. "It's bad. Michael, you know better than to bring wildlife here." Michael met her gaze, his voice low. "It wouldn't have survived the night. You saw the trap out there. Poachers got the mother." Rebecca sighed, her shoulders softening. She grabbed her medical kit, cleaning the wound and wrapping it. "I'll stabilize it, but don't get your hopes up. It's weak." She placed the kitten in a blanket-lined box near the stove, her movements gentle despite her words. Luna hovered, her eyes fixed on the tiny creature. "We should call it Scout," she said softly, "because it needs to learn to survive." Michael smiled faintly, but his mind was heavy. He knew the law keeping a bobcat without a permit was illegal. And yet, as he watched Luna sit cross-legged by the box, whispering to Scout, he felt a flicker of hope. The dog settled nearby, Rusty closest to the box, his muzzle resting near Scout's head. The storm raged outside, sealing them in, and Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this kitten, half dead and wild, had been brought to them for a reason. That night, as Luna slept and Rebecca checked Scout's condition, Michael sat at the kitchen table, his old field journal open. He wrote January 12, 2025, found Bobcat kitten, injured, likely orphaned. Against protocol, brought it home. Dog showing protective behavior. Luna named it Scout. Storm worsening. No contact with wildlife depth possible. He paused, then added, "I failed a hawk once. I won't fail this one." The wind howled, and Scout's faint breaths filled the quiet. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, the kitten was alive, and so was the fragile hope it carried. The blizzard buried the Thompson farm under 3 feet of snow, sealing them off from the world as the wind battered the windows. Inside, the kitchen glowed with the warmth of the wood stove, the air thick with the scent of pine and antiseptic. Scout, the bobcat kitten, lay in his blanket-lined box, his tiny chest rising and falling more steadily now. Rebecca had worked through the night, her veterinarian skills keeping the kitten alive, though her face remained taut with worry. Michael sat at the table, his coffee cold, his field journal open to a new page filled with notes about Scout's condition and the dog's behavior. Luna, still in her pajamas, knelt by the box, her dark braid brushing the floor as she whispered to Scout. "You're gonna be okay," she said, her voice soft but fierce. The 3 German shepherds, Rusty, Finn, and Aspen, formed a protective semicircle around the box, their eyes fixed on the kitten. Rusty, the leader, lay closest, his grizzled muzzle inches from Scout's head, as if willing the kitten to live. Michael watched, marveling at the dog's gentleness. He'd seen Rusty chase off coyotes without hesitation. Yet here he was, guarding a creature that should have been a rival. The storm had cut power to the farm, and the phone lines were down, leaving them isolated from the Wildlife Conservation Department. Michael knew they'd need to report Scout soon, but for now, the blizzard gave them time and a chance to see if the kitten could pull through. Rebecca emerged from the pantry, her auburn hair tied back, her hands carrying a syringe of electrolyte solution. "He's stable," she said, kneeling by the box. "But he's not out of the woods, if he makes it through today. We'll talk about next steps." Her tone was clipped, professional. But Michael caught the flicker of concern in her eyes. She didn't want to admit it, but she was rooting for Scout, too. Luna looked up, her face brightening. "He's tougher than he looks. Mom, he's a fighter." Rebecca's lips twitched, almost a smile, but she stayed focused, administering the syringe. Michael sipped his coffee, his mind drifting to the trap he'd seen in the forest. Poachers were a growing problem in Montana, and the thought of Scout's mother caught in that cruel metal made his stomach churn. He pushed the image away, focusing on Luna. She'd been quieter since they moved here, her days spent with books and the bugs instead of friends. School was a 30-minute drive, and her classmates, born and raised in these hills, saw her as an outsider. Saving Scout had lit a spark in her, and Michael wasn't sure he could let that spark die, even if the law demanded it admitted it. By noon, Scout stirred, his cloudy blue eyes blinking open. Luna gasped, her hands clasped. "Dad, look." "He's awake," Michael joined her, his heart lifting as the kitten lifted its head, wobbling but determined. Rebecca checked its wound, nodding. "He's responding. We'll try some formula soon." Luna's face glowed, and she reached for her sketchbook, already doodling Scout's face. She'd always been creative, but lately her drawings were her refuge. Michael noticed she'd added a new trick, a series of hand signals and soft clicks she used to get the dog's attention. "I'm going to teach Scout." "Too," she said, practicing a gentle clap. "He's smart, I can tell." Michael chuckled, but his mind was on the barn. Rusty hadn't left Scout's side, even to eat. Finn, the youngest, kept nudging a toy toward the box, as if inviting the kitten to play. One, ever vigilant, watched the door, her ears twitching at every creak of the storm-battered house. Their acceptance of Scout was uncanny, almost unnatural, and Michael jotted it down, dogs showing pack behavior toward Bobcat. No aggression, protective instincts dominant. The day wore on, the storm unrelenting. By evening, Scout was strong enough to lap at a saucer of formula, his tiny tongue flicking clumsily. Luna cheered, her voice echoing in the quiet house. She sat cross-legged, guiding Scout with her clicks and claps, her language already taking shape. To Michael's surprise, Scout's ears twitched at the sound, his head tilting toward Luna. "See," she said, beaming. "He's learning." Rebecca raised an eyebrow but said nothing, her focus on cleaning the wound. That night, as the family ate stew by lantern light, a knock rattled the door. Michael frowned, setting down his spoon. No one could be out in this storm. He opened the door to find Mr. Jenkins, their nearest neighbor, bundled in a snow-crusted coat. The old man's face was sour, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the box in the kitchen. "Heard you brought a wildcat in," he said, his voice gruff. "That's trouble. Thompson, those things kill chickens. I lost half my flock to one last year." Michael kept his tone even. "It's just a kitten. Jenkins, orphaned. We're keeping it alive until we can call the Rangers." Jenkins snorted. "Law's clear. You're asking for trouble." He left as abruptly as he'd come, the wind swallowing his footsteps. Rebecca crossed her arms. "He'll report us the second the road's clear." Michael nodded, his jaw tight. Jenkins had been a thorn since they moved here, always grumbling about their dogs or their fence line. But he wasn't wrong about the law. Luna's face fell. "They won't take Scout, will they?" Michael forced a smile. "We'll figure it out, kiddo." But sleep didn't come easily that night. Michael lay awake, listening to the storm, his mind wrestling with the future. He'd failed that hawk years ago, and the guilt still stung. Scout was a second chance. But at what cost the next morning? The storm began to ease. Though the roads remained blocked, Scout was stronger, his movements less shaky. Luna spent hours with him, teaching her signals, her patience endless. By afternoon, Scout was stumbling out of the box, his tiny legs wobbly but curious. The dogs watched, tails wagging, as Luna guided him with clicks. To everyone's shock, Scout followed her, mimicking Finn's playful hop. Michael grabbed his journal, kitten mimicking canine behavior. Responds to human signals. Unprecedented. Rebecca, checking Scout's wound, admitted, "He's a miracle, but he's still wild." "Michael, we can't forget that." Luna, overhearing, shook her head. "He's not wild, he's family." Her words hung in the air, simple but heavy. That evening, Luna pulled Michael aside, her sketchbook in hand. She'd drawn Scout with the dogs, their forms blending into one pack. "I'm lonely at school," she confessed, her voice small, "but Scout makes me feel brave, like I belong somewhere." Michael hugged her, his throat tight, He knew then that Scout wasn't just a kitten, they were all tethered to him now. As the second week of the storm began, Scout thrived, his wound healing, his fur growing sleek. Luna's lessons took root. Scout came when called, played chase with Finn, and even tried to bark, his hiss growl making the family laugh. Michael's notes grew longer, his fascination deepening. But Jenkins's warning loomed, and the radio crackled with news of clearing roads. The wildlife department would come soon, and Michael dreaded their verdict. Scout, with his dog-like gait and wild eyes, was no ordinary bobcat. He was a bridge between worlds, and Michael wasn't ready to let that bridge break. The snow began to melt, revealing the muddy scars of the Montana landscape. But the Thompson farm remained a fortress of warmth against the lingering chill. Scout, the bobcat kitten, was no longer the frail creature Michael had carried through the blizzard. At 10 weeks old, his spotted fur gleamed, and his once cloudy eyes now sparkled with a fierce curiosity. He prowled the kitchen with a clumsy grace, his movements a strange blend of feline stealth and the confident strut Luna had taught him. Mimicking the dogs, Rusty, Finn, and Aspen followed him like shadows, their pack dynamic unshaken by Scout's growing strength. Michael watched from the table, his field journal filling with the observations Scout mimics canine posture, responds to Luna's signals, attempts vocalizations resembling barks, behavioral hybridity increasing. The storm had kept the Wildlife Conservation Department at bay for 2 weeks, but the crackle of the radio that morning warned of clearing roads. Michael knew time was running out. Luna, oblivious to the looming threat, sat cross-legged by Scout, her sketchbook open. She'd added new pages, Scout leaping after Finn, Scout curled beside Rusty, Scout watching Aspen patrol the yard. Her language of clicks and hand signals had grown sophisticated, and Scout responded with uncanny precision, trotting to her side when she clapped twice. "He's smarter than Finn," Luna teased, tossing a toy for the youngest dog, who bounded after it. Scout followed, his leap more powerful, landing beside Finn with a playful swipe. The dogs didn't flinch. They treated him as one of their own. Rebecca, sterilizing her medical tools, glanced over. "He's healing well," she said, her tone softer now. "But he's still a bobcat." "Luna, don't forget what that means." Luna's smile faltered, but she didn't reply, her fingers tightening on her pencil. Michael felt the weight of Rebecca's words. He'd been wrestling with the same truth, his biologist's mind at war with his heart. Scout was thriving, but he was a wild animal, and the law was clear. The memory of his failed attempt to save a hawk years ago gnawed at him. A reminder of the fine line between care and harm, yet Scout's behavior sitting vigilantly like Rusty. Playing with Luna's boundless energy was rewriting everything Michael thought he knew about nature. That afternoon, a truck rumbled up the drive, its tires crunching gravel. Luna's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Michael opened the door to find Ranger Martinez, his uniform crisp despite the mud. "Heard about your bobcat," he said, his gaze flicking to Scout, who sat beside Rusty, mimicking the dog's alert posture. "You know the rules." "Thompson." Michael nodded, his stomach nodding. "We found him dying, couldn't leave him." Martinez stepped inside, his boots leaving muddy prints. He watched Scout for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "He's tame," he said finally, almost to himself, responds to his name, follows commands. "That's not normal," Luna piped up, her voice fierce. "He's not tame, he's family." Martinez's lips twitched, but he shook his head. "Doesn't matter, keeping wildlife without a permit is illegal. I'll need to report this." Michael exhaled. "I'm applying for a special permit. Give us time." Martinez hesitated, then nodded. "I'll hold off a few days, but don't expect miracles." "Who has he left?" Luna clutched at Scout, her eyes brimming. "They can't take him." "Dad." Michael knelt beside his. "We'll fight for him." "Kiddo." But doubt gnawed at him. The next day, trouble arrived in the form of Mr. Jenkins, the neighbor who'd warned them before. He stormed up the drive, his face red. "You're putting us all at risk," he barked, pointing at Scout, who was wrestling with Finn in the yard. "That thing'll grow up and kill my chickens, just like the last one." Michael kept his voice calm. He's not like that. Jenkins. He's bonded with our dogs. With us. Jenkins scoffed. I've called the wildlife department. They'll be here soon. He left, leaving a cloud of tension. Luna's face crumpled, and she ran to her room, slamming the door. Rebecca sighed, rubbing her temples. He's not wrong, Michael. We're in over our heads. Michael didn't reply, his mind racing. He grabbed his laptop and began drafting the permit application, detailing Scout's unique behavior. Luna emerged hours later, her eyes red but determined. She'd been filming Scout, capturing his dog-like antics chasing Finn, sitting beside Rusty, even attempting a hoarse bark that made Aspen tilt her head. I'm posting these online, she said. People need to see him. Michael hesitated but nodded. Luna's video spread quickly, shared by locals and picked up by Montana wildlife groups. Comments poured in. Is that really a bobcat? He thinks he's a dog. By evening, Scout was a local phenomenon, and Luna's loneliness seemed to ease, her phone buzzing with messages from classmates who'd never spoken to her before. Over the next week, Scout grew stronger, his movements sharper, his instincts sharper still. He climbed the kitchen cabinets with ease, his claws clicking, but returned to Luna's side at her signal. Michael's notes grew frantic. Scout patrols farm boundaries with dogs, climbs trees but stays within sight of pack. Loyalty unprecedented for Phalid. Luna's lessons intensified. She taught Scout to fetch a small ball, her clicks guiding him. One evening, as Scout chased Finn across the yard, a low growl stopped them cold. Michael grabbed his flashlight, heart pounding. A coyote stood at the fence, eyes glinting. Rusty barked, hackles up, and Scout, tiny but fearless, mimicked him, his hiss sharp and defiant. The coyote fled, and Luna laughed, hugging Scout. You're one of us, she whispered. But the threat of this wildlife department loomed. 2 weeks after Martinez's visit, a letter arrived. The permit application was under review. But Scout's fate hung in the balance. Luna's videos had gone viral, drawing thousands of supporters. But also scrutiny. Mr. Jenkins had filed a formal complaint, citing his past losses to bobcats. Michael felt the walls closing in. One night, as the family sat by the fire, Luna opened her sketchbook. She'd drawn Scout carrying a small branch, a detail she'd imagined. What if he brings something back from the wild, she said, like a piece of the forest, to show he belongs here. Michael smiled, but his chest tightened. Scout was no ordinary bobcat, but the law didn't care about miracles. The next morning, a wildlife department truck arrived, carrying Martinez and a zoologist named Dr. Ellis. They observed Scout for hours, noting his response to Luna's signals, his play with the mums, his strange bark hiss. Dr. Ellis shook her head, amazed. This is unprecedented, she said. But he's still a wild animal. If the permit's denied, he'll need to be reintroduced. Luna's face paled, and she clutched Scout, who nuzzled her hand. Michael's heart sank. He'd failed that hawk long ago, and the thought of failing Scout and Luna felt unbearable. As the truck drove away, Luna posted another video, her voice trembling but strong. Scout's not just a bobcat. He's our family. Please help us keep him. The video exploded online, reaching millions, and messages of support flooded in. But Michael knew the fight was far from over. Scout, oblivious, curled up with the bugs, his wild heart beating in rhythm with theirs. The Montana spring was breaking through, the snow giving way to patches of green. But the air in the Thompson household was heavy with dread. Scout, now 4 months old, had grown into a sleek young bobcat, his spotted coat vibrant, his movements a seamless blend of feline agility and the bold stride of his canine siblings. He patrolled the farm with Rusty, Finn, and Aspen, his ears twitching at every sound. Yet he always returned to Luna's side at her double clap signal. Michael's journal was thick with notes. Scout exhibits pack loyalty, mimics canine territorial behavior, responds to human commands with 90% consistency. But the Wildlife Conservation Department's letter, pinned to the fridge, cast a shadow over their progress. The special permit had been denied. Scout was to be surrendered for reintroduction to the wild within 3 days. Luna, now 13 and fiercer than ever, refused to accept it. "They can't take him," she said, her voice shaking as she brushed Scout's fur. "He's not just a bobcat. He's ours." Rebecca, her hands busy preparing a food bag for Scout's release, sighed. The law doesn't care about feelings. Luna, we knew this might happen. Michael, standing by the window, felt his old guilt resurface. The hawk he'd failed to save all those years ago haunted him, whispering that he might fail a Scout, too. Luna's videos had gone viral, amassing millions of views, and the farm was now a local attraction, with strangers stopping by to glimpse the bobcat who thought he was a dog. But Mr. Jenkins, their neighbor, had doubled down. Rallying other locals with tales of bobcat attacks on livestock, his complaint had tipped the scales against the Thompsons. That evening, Luna posted an emotional video, her face streaked with tears. "Scout's my best friend," she said, her voice breaking. "He's not wild anymore. Please help us keep him." The video spread like wildfire, shared by wildlife enthusiasts and even a national news outlet. Messages of support poured in, but so did threats from those who saw Scout as a danger. Michael's phone buzzed with calls from reporters, and he ignored them, his focus on the permit appeal he was drafting. The next day, Ranger Martinez arrived with Dr. Ellis and the department director, Ms. Carver, a stern zoologist with sharp eyes. They spent hours observing Scout, how he chased Finn, sat vigilantly with Rusty, and responded to Luna's clicks. Ms. Carver's expression softened slightly. "This is extraordinary," she admitted, "but the law has no exceptions. He's a wild animal." Dr. Ellis proposed a compromise. Scout would be released 100 miles away in a wilderness area, fitted with a GPS collar. If he adapted, he'd stay free. If not, they'd reconsider. Michael's stomach churned. "He's too domesticated," he argued. "He won't survive." Ms. Carver was unmoved. "We'll monitor him. It's the best we can do." Luna's eyes filled with tears, but she held Scout tightly, whispering, "You'll find us again." The day of the release came too soon. Rebecca packed a food bag for 2 weeks, though she knew Scout needed to hunt. Michael attached the GPS collar, his hands trembling as he stroked Scout's fur. Luna sobbed, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. The drawing of Scout with a branch, now a painful prophecy. The dog sensed the tension, whining and pacing. Rusty stood like a wall before the transport cage, only moving when Michael commanded. At the release site, a lush valley with a rushing stream, Scout stepped cautiously from the cage, sniffing the unfamiliar air. He turned back, his yellow eyes locking on Luna and Michael, and for a moment, it seemed he wouldn't leave. Then a rustle in the bushes caught his attention, and he vanished into the forest with a predator's grace. Luna collapsed into Michael's arms, sobbing. The GPS screen blinked, showing Scout moving deeper into the wild. "He'll be fine," Michael whispered, trying to convince himself. Back at the farm, the dogs fell into a deep depression, refusing food and spending hours on the hill overlooking the valley, eyes fixed on the horizon. Luna checked the GPS hourly, tracking Scout's cautious movements through new territory. He found shelter, hunted small prey, and seemed to adapt. But on the 10th night, the signal showed him stopped on a hillside for nearly 24 hours. Michael feared injury or illness, but at sunset, Scout began moving toward the farm. Luna gasped, pointing at the screen. "He's coming home." Scout's journey was grueling. On the 6th day, he reached a swollen river, its waters high from spring melt. A typical bobcat would avoid it. But Scout, taught by dogs unafraid of water, found a narrow point and swam across, his powerful limbs cutting the current. On the 7th day, he faced a busy highway, hiding in bushes for 3 hours before darting across in a flash. The most harrowing moment came on the 9th day, when Scout encountered a lone wolf. Michael later pieced it together from tracks in a small blood-stained Scout, using Rusty's intimidating stance, had puffed up and hissed, then scrambled up a tree, escaping with a minor wound to his leg. Day by day, Scout's path grew clearer. He wasn't wandering, he was heading home. Michael calculated he'd covered 30 miles in 5 days, faster than any recorded bobcat in unfamiliar terrain. Luna clung to hope, her sketchbook now filled with maps tracing Scout's route. "He's not lost," she said. "He knows where he belongs." But on the 12th night, the GPS signal died in a rocky, forested area 40 miles from the farm. Michael and Luna drove to the spot, searching all day, calling Scout's name. They found a broken piece of the GPS collar caught on a branch, blood nearby. Luna's voice broke. "What if he's hurt?" Michael's heart sank, the memory of the hawk's dimming eyes flooding back. They returned home, defeated, the dogs still sitting on the hill, their whines piercing the silence. Luna barely left her room, her phone silent despite the thousands of supporters online. Rebecca called every ranger station and vet within 100 miles, while Michael pored over maps, estimating Scout's speed. If he was alive, he could reach the farm in 2 to 3 days unless wolves, bears, or hunger stopped him. The uncertainty was torture. On the third night, as the family sat in a heavy silence, the dogs erupted, bolting to the door, barking wildly. Michael flung it open, his pulse racing. In the moonlight, a slender figure stood at the yard's edge. Scout, thinner, dirt-streaked, his collar gone, but alive. In his mouth was a small cedar branch, its needles green, a type Michael recognized from the release site's valley. Luna gasped. "It's his gift from the forest." She ran to him, dropping to her knees as Scout sprinted forward. Not with a bobcat's caution, but a dog's joyful charge. The dogs met him in a tangle of fur and yips, and Luna sobbed, clutching them all. Michael and Rebecca followed, tears in their eyes. Scout had crossed 100 miles rivers, highways, wolf territories, and human settlements in 16 days, driven by something no expert could explain. Luna held the branch, her voice trembling. "He brought the wild home to us." Michael called Martinez, who arrived at dawn. Stunned. "This doesn't happen," he muttered, watching Scout curl up with the mine. "Bobcats don't do this." But Scout had, and Michael knew the fight to keep him was just beginning. The morning after Scout's return, the Thompson farm buzzed with a fragile hope, tempered by the shadow of the Wildlife Conservation Department's ruling. Scout, the bobcat who had crossed 100 miles to find his way home, lay curled among Rusty, Finn, and Aspen in the kitchen, his cedar branch gift placed carefully on Luna's sketchbook. His fur was matted, his body leaner, and a small wound on his leg, likely from the wolf encounter or the broken GPS collar, needed tending. Rebecca knelt beside him, her veterinarian's hands gentle as she cleaned the cut. "He's tougher than I thought," she admitted, her voice soft with awe. Luna, her eyes still red from crying, stroked Scout's head, whispering, "You're home now." Michael stood by the window, his field journal open but untouched, his mind racing. Ranger Martinez's words from dawn echoed. They'll want to take him again, probably farther this time. The thought of losing Scout, after his impossible journey, felt like a betrayal of the bond they'd built. The dogs, no longer depressed, stayed close to Scout, their tails wagging as if sensing the fight wasn't over. Michael's guilt over the hawk he'd failed to save years ago lingered, but Scout's return had reignited his resolve. He wouldn't let this family human, canine, and feline be torn apart. By noon, Martinez returned with Ms. Carver, the Wildlife Department director, and Dr. Ellis, the zoologist. Their faces were a mix of disbelief and curiosity as they watched Scout respond to Luna's double clap, trotting to her side like a dog. He sat beside Rusty, mimicking the shepherd's vigilant posture, his yellow eyes wild yet trusting. Ms. Carver shook her head. "This challenges everything we know about bobcats," she said. "But the law is clear. He belongs in the wild." Luna's voice cut through, fierce and trembling. "He chose us. He came back." Dr. Ellis nodded. "His behavior suggests deep social bonding, unprecedented for a felid. Releasing him again could be cruel." Martinez, quieter than usual, met Michael's gaze. "I'll propose an alternative, but it's a long shot." As they left, Luna clutched Scout, her sketchbook falling open to the drawing of him with a branch of vision she'd had before his return. The cedar branch now lay beside it, a symbol of Scout's dual nature, wild and tame. Forest and home. That afternoon, Michael found Luna in the yard, filming Scout playing with Finn. "I'm not giving up," she said, her voice steady. "I'm going to speak for him." Her words sparked an idea. Michael contacted a local news outlet, and by evening, a reporter arrived, drawn by Scout's viral fame. Luna, nervous but determined, showed her videos and explained Scout's journey, her language of clicks guiding him through tricks. The story aired that night, amplifying the online support. Messages flooded in, but so did opposition, led by Mr. Jenkins, who told the reporter, "That Bobcat's a danger. It'll turn on them." His words stung, but Michael noticed a crack in his neighbor's resolve. Jenkins had lingered, watching Scout's playful sprint with Finn, his scowl softening. The next day, Miss Carver called, her tone formal. "We're holding a community meeting tomorrow. The public response demands it. Be prepared." Luna's eyes lit up. "I want to speak," she said. Michael hesitated, knowing the pressure, but Rebecca nodded. "Let her. She's earned it." Luna spent the night writing, her sketchbook filled with notes and drawings of Scout's journey. The meeting was held in the town hall, packed with locals, reporters, and wildlife advocates. Mr. Jenkins sat in the front, arms crossed, but his eyes followed Luna as she took the podium, her voice shaking at first. "Scout's not just a bobcat," she said, holding up her sketchbook, the cedar branch tucked inside. "He's my family. He crossed rivers, highways, even a wolf, to come home. He brought this branch from the forest, like he's telling us he belongs here." She played a video montage, Scout mimicking Rusty, chasing Finn, curling up with Aspen, responding to her clicks. The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. Jenkins shifted, his face unreadable. Ms. Carver, flanked by Dr. Ellis and Martinez, listened intently. When Luna finished, her eyes met Michael's, and he saw her loneliness lift. She'd found her voice. The director stood. "This is unprecedented," she said. "We'll review all evidence, including public input." That night, Luna's speech went viral, shared by millions, support poured in. But Michael knew the law was rigid. He and Rebecca sat up late, planning a backup appeal, while Scout slept with the dogs, oblivious to the storm around him. 2 weeks later, Ms. Carver returned to the farm, alone. She watched Scout patrol with Rusty, climb a tree, then return to Luna's signal. "He's neither fully wild nor domesticated," she said. "He's something new." She handed Michael a document, a special permit, the first of its kind in Montana, allowing Scout to stay under strict conditions, a spacious outdoor enclosure, regular inspections, and participation in educational programs. Michael's hands shook as he read it. How, he asked. Ms. Carver's eyes softened. Luna's speech showed us what science alone couldn't: the power of connection across species. We're not just enforcing laws, we're learning from exceptions like Scout. Luna hugged Scout, tears streaming, and the dogs yipped. Sensing the victory, Michael called Jenkins, inviting him over. The old man arrived, gruff but quiet, and watched Scout play. "Didn't think a bobcat could be like that," he muttered, then added, "Sorry for the trouble." Michael nodded, no hard feelings. A year later, the farm was transformed. The enclosure, built with donations from Scout's supporters, was a half-acre of trees and rocks where Scout roamed, always returning to the dogs. Students and researchers visited, guided by Luna, now 14 and set on becoming a zoologist. Michael published a paper on Scout's hybrid behavior, earning international attention. Luna kept the cedar branch in the enclosure, a reminder of Scout's journey. One evening, as Scout sat on a high rock, his posture mirroring Rusty's, Michael watched with Rebecca and Luna. "He's where he belongs," Rebecca said, her hand in Michael's. Luna smiled, her sketchbook now filled with new dreams. Scout's journey near death in a blizzard, raised by doves, defying nature to return home, had proven a truth deeper than instinct. Family is forged not by birth, but by love. As the sun set, Scout's yellow eyes gleamed, wild yet tethered to the pack, a creature between worlds who had found his place.